Welcome back to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. We come to you guys with some breaking news, this time from British politics. The UK government is in absolute meltdown tonight, as we are currently, as we speak, having emergency urgent meetings in both Downing Street, the Prime Minister's office, and the Home Office. The Migrant hotel projects are falling apart as we now have potentially a new legal precedent set, which means that one by one, migrant hotels that have been set up by successive governments over the last few years might fully collapse. And this will obviously put the government in a very awkward position. But we're going to give you guys the latest update on what's actually happening right now, tonight, in the heart of Westminster, as Downing Street number 10 team, the Prime Minister's team, are trying to coordinate things with both the Home Office but also the Ministry of Justice, because they did something disgusting earlier today. They tried to do a dirty trick which absolutely failed. First things first, there was a massive victory in Epping, Essex, one of the infamous migrant hotels, the Bell Hotel. Wow, they have to now evacuate. They have to kick the migrants out. That is a interim injunction, which means that the hotel has to be cleared of its occupants within 14 days. But the parent company, the Somani Hotels, have said that they intend to appeal the decision. But it's not just the hotel. It's fascinating, by the way. The hotel management, the ownership, they are in favor of their premises to be used for illegal migrants. Firstly, they get good money from the government. Secondly, there are a bunch of left-wing weirdos, right? A lot of hotels have rejected, a lot of hotels have resisted, but these guys seem to be quite happy about it. Not only the hotel want to do an appeal, the government themselves, they are now in a bigger trouble than they think. Because number one, as I said, in this country, in the UK, things are based, the law and order, the rule of law is based on legal precedents. When something is set, and this could potentially obviously lead to that, then that means that it will be a domino effect. Second problem for the government is that the Home Office tried, and the government tried to block the injunction. This was a decision by the High Court. They tried to block it. They tried to fight against it. It's now been exposed. It's not looking good. There's a reaction from the Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Philp, saying, "This ruling is a moment of relief for the people of Epping. Residents should never have had to fight their own government just to feel safe in their own town." Now, obviously, let's not forget that it was successive governments that failed to fix this problem, including a number of Tory governments. This wave started under Boris Johnson's premiership, continued even with Rishi Sunak. And the problem with that, since Boris Johnson, Downing Street was completely centralized. So it didn't really matter if you had government ministers, cabinet ministers, around the table fighting against it, because Downing Street was calling the shots. Just like right now, by the way, Downing Street is extremely centralized. The government is centralized. Government departments are meaningless at this point. So you have had, for example, a number of previously Home Secretaries, including Suella Braverman, who came in as Home Secretary quite late while the crisis was already ongoing. She tried, she couldn't do anything because Downing Street was blocking it. And Downing Street was blocking it because the deep state, the cabinet secretary and the civil servants were blocking it. Now, the problem here is for the Home Office. Let's talk about the Home Office. What did they try to do? They tried to block this earlier on, the High Court injunction that the Bell Hotel should be evacuated. They said it will be substantially it would substantially interfere with the statutory duty to house asylum seekers under the Human Rights Act. So the government's excuse was that, well, we were trying to respect the ECHR, so we have to house the migrants. It says that it risks breaching Article 3 of ECHR, and which obviously means that inhumane treatment of illegal migrants. They also said that there is a very considerable constraint on asylum accommodation. We don't know what to do basically with illegal migrants. If we can't put them in these hotels, what's going to happen? Which, yeah, makes sense. I have a solution. Deport them, you idiots. They also said, the government, when they tried to block this, they said it requires the Home Office to relocate a sizable number of people in 2 weeks. They don't know where to put them. That's not our problem, is it? The government also said that this injunction could act as an excuse, essentially, for further violent protests at the hotels. Now, a lot of you guys have been watching Tousi TV and new media outlets over the last few weeks, few months. Have you seen vast, violent riots, protests by the British people against the outside these hotels? Or have you been seeing actually peaceful protests, mostly led by women and girls and families? But according to the government, these were riots, violent protests. The government also said that other local authorities may also seek interim injunctions, which could become the new norm. Yes, the new legal precedent. Yes, the government has a point. The government has a point to be panicking right now, tonight, because that's how it works in the United Kingdom. The government says, the Home Office, that the Bell Hotel in Epping, Essex, is an appropriate site. And the fact, this is a quote, the fact of an alleged criminal offence is not grounds for its closure. They basically say, it doesn't matter that a bunch of illegal migrants from that hotel and other hotels are committing crime. We should still house them, give them free clothes, free food, and everything else. If you can't deport them, just send them to El Salvador. I think they will be okay over there, right? Now, let's talk about the biggest issue for the British government. As I said, the legal precedent is going to be the next big challenge. They have to try their best to prevent this, because otherwise every single migrant hotel will be outlawed by the courts, which is kind of ironic. But the British people have put so much pressure on the local authorities and local councils. This is why I always say to people in countries like the United Kingdom, please take local politics seriously. People don't. Some people do, but not everybody. Local politics, local authorities, local councils, your city councils, everything, they matter. The turnout for elections are low because people don't really find them interesting. They don't even get involved with local matters unless something like this happens, and obviously people care, right? It matters. The reason that this happened today was because people in Essex, in Epping, went out there, protested and protested and protested peacefully. They lobbied and lobbied and lobbied their local councillors. They emailed, they did petitions, they put pressure. And that is local democracy. The local councillors panicked. MPs can't do anything. Local members of parliament are powerless. Councillors are powerful. Then the local council said, okay, we're going to have to do something because we're going to lose our seats. And that's what they did. This is why it's extremely important for grassroots politics on a local level to be empowered rather than just national politics. People protesting outside Parliament or outside Downing Street or outside the White House or outside whatever, the Bundestag in Germany. Now, local politics is more important, is more powerful. Now, as I said, as we speak tonight, there are panic meetings in both the Home Office and Number 10. I did hear from our Westminster source that apparently there's also a meeting in the Ministry of Justice among the civil servants, the political advisors actually. We can't verify that yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if there is also a meeting at the Ministry of Justice, because of course that's the department that would be challenging again the courts. Now, there has been some reaction, and we're now going to have to get into the politics of this, which is kind of interesting, because the political right, the so-called political right in this country, that includes the Tories, Reform UK, whatever, once again, instead of focusing on the government, they are busy attacking each other, obviously. First, before we do that, let's go to the reaction we have received from the Independent MP, Rupert Lowe.
It's a great result this evening in Epping Forest. Credit must go to, firstly, the people of Epping who stood up and fought back against what they saw as an injustice. Credit to the local council for bringing this legal case. And so far, the judge has made the right decision. It now opens up the question of what other councils are going to do to protect their constituents. And today, my team at Restore Britain has written to every council asking them what action they propose to take. This is the beginning of the fight back. The solution is simple: detain and deport all illegal migrants, either living here or arriving here illegally. Not a complex solution to what is not a complex problem, but there is not sufficient will in our government to tackle the problem and head it off at the pass.
He's right. This is the beginning of the fight back. There's also a statement from the leader of Reform UK, Nigel Farage, who said that this is a victory for the parents and concerned residents of Epping. They do not want their young women being assaulted on the streets. This community stood up bravely despite being slandered as far right and have won. They represent the vast majority of decent people in this country. Young undocumented males who break into the UK illegally should not be free to walk the streets anywhere. They must be detained and deported, using the same phrases as Rupert Lowe. I hope that Epping provides inspiration to others across the country, which is kind of interesting because Nigel Farage praised the local protests, but the Reform UK officially banned their own members and their own local councillors and candidates from attending these protests. Some of them still did, some of them got into trouble, got suspended. But now Reform UK are thanking the same people that didn't want to be associated with, which, you know, is just party politics as usual. Going to the other party, the Tory party, Robert Jenrick, who's been going to the protests himself, is also celebrating. He did do a post on X saying congratulations to the people of Epping. They protested, they were smeared, but they have won. The solution, however, cannot be to move the illegal migrants and force them on another community. This has gone on for too long. Far too long. The country is well past the breaking point, and the last government didn't listen and failed. That's the Tory government. Starmer's making it even worse. Change the laws. Get third country deals. Deport everyone who's come here illegally. End this. It's good that Robert Jenrick acknowledges that the previous Tory government failed. There are still some Tories who are still making excuses for what they did or what they failed to do, including Boris Johnson himself, the former Prime Minister, which is kind of fascinating. Now, in the middle of all this, there has been a number of political attacks from Reform UK on Robert Jenrick. Robert Jenrick, by the way, was the immigration minister for a short period of time after the crisis started, and he tried to fight back inside the cabinet. He failed and he resigned. He left. He didn't want to be associated with the Tory government. Now, what they did, Zia Youssef and Reform UK today spent time posting an edited video, basically a false video, from a few years ago when Jenrick was a government minister. Zia Youssef said from Reform UK, from Essex to Lincolnshire, Robert Jenrick proudly announced that he would scale up migrant hotels across the country. We will never forget. So Reform UK implied or directly said that Robert Jenrick was promoting migrant hotels as a government minister and he was happy, right? And people kicked off about this, but that's not true. That video is edited. Let's go to the out of context video, because if you watch it first, you'll be like, oh yes, that's a crazy thing to do, Robert Jenrick.
We will set up to provide basic accommodation at scale. In Essex and Lincolnshire, these will be scaled up over the coming months and will collectively provide accommodation to several thousand asylum seekers.
So if you notice there was like cuts and people, if you see that out of context, it sounds like, oh yes, he's saying he's happy to build more hotels or buy more, rent more hotels. That wasn't the case. If you watch the on-clip video, it's clear that Robert Jenrick was actually talking about using military bases temporarily to house the migrants in order to get them out of the hotels that Boris Johnson put them in. And that was the idea. And then the idea was to obviously deport them. Boris Johnson's government and then obviously Rishi Sunak's government then failed to do that. Let's go to the actual video.
Next. I've said before that we have to suffuse our entire system with deterrence. And this must include how we house illegal migrants. So today the government is announcing the first tranche of sites we will set up to provide basic accommodation at scale. The government will use military sites being disposed of in Essex and Lincolnshire and a separate site in East Sussex. These will be scaled up over the coming months and will collectively provide accommodation to several thousand asylum seekers through repurposed barrack blocks and porter cabins. In addition, my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, is showing leadership on this issue by bringing forward proposals to provide accommodation at Catterick Garrison Barracks in his constituency. And we're continuing to explore the possibility of accommodating migrants in vessels, as they are in Scotland and in the Netherlands, overnight on our communities. And they will...
There was a burden on communities. Then, Jenrick posted this. I see Reform's former chairman Zia Youssef has unfortunately pushed another 2 lies about me, which has been a constant campaign by Reform, because they see Jenrick as a potential threat in the future. One of which he's already had to delete. The first is a video from the 1st of November 2022, the interview that Zia selectively clipped. It was about the Manston Holding Centre where illegal migrants are processed when they first arrived. I was 8 days into the job of Migration Minister. He also then said that Suella Braverman, when she was Home Secretary, and I spent that year fighting tooth and nail for the changes we needed on both legal and illegal migration. We set in train the closing of 100 hotels, made possible by the fact that the small boats fell by over a third, the only time they've fallen, before or since. But we knew that wasn't even close to enough. We needed a fundamental change in policy and law. When it became clear such changes were not going to happen, I resigned and campaigned for them from the backbenches. I tabled the amendments to the Rwanda bill to make it effective, which the government rejected. This is the Tory government, and also the Labour government following that. Ultimately, I rebelled and voted against the bill that I knew wouldn't work. Only 10 other MPs out of 650 joined me. And from that day until today, I have kept fighting for what's needed: the immediate detention and deportation of all those coming illegally, the removal of all those here illegally and of all foreign criminals, a proper halt to mass migration through a legally binding cap, including no visa renewal for those here but not contributing. Then Suella Braverman also joined in, saying, I arrived at the Home Office in September 2022 to find a crisis. The reception centre at Manston was overwhelmed with the summer influx and there was a severe lack of bed space for migrants to be moved onto around the country. With Robert Jenrick, I worked to ease the pressure on Manston by urgently procuring emergency accommodation around the country. The alternative was to release illegal migrants upon arrival and allow them to wander freely in the local Kent community, something I refused to do. I stand by my record over the course of 2023. We successfully reduced the number of migrant hotels by 100, as Jenrick also confirmed, through painstaking work. And the number of arrivals fell by a third in 2023, which is correct, unmatched under Labour. She finished by saying, those who have been following this crisis closely know the details of the complexity involved. I argued that we needed to leave the ECHR in order to solve it, but was unsupported by the cabinet, the Tory cabinet. That is why the last government failed to stop the boats. And that's why I've set out the detailed plan on how to leave the ECHR now. No soundbites, no gutturals, no puerile attacks. It's the plan that needs to be adopted to solve the crisis now. Question is, who is bold enough to deliver it? Yeah, obviously both Jenrick and Braverman resigned from the Tory government when they realised that the deep state and Downing Street themselves and the Prime Ministers were completely stupid and they were stopping any attempt by any government minister or any backbench MP from any party to actually stop this mess. Boris Johnson himself walked away after betraying the British public, and he's still to this day refusing to acknowledge that this was partly his fault for not acknowledging it early on. 2020 was the first big wave of small boats. This wasn't the beginning of illegal migration. We already had illegal migration. It was the first wave of small boats. Compared to now, it was still tiny. But compared to 2019, 2018, it was huge. They were still asleep. The cabinet. the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson. Obviously following that, the Home Office, the bureaucrats, civil servants, everybody did all they can to stop any progress from any politician from fixing this. This current government under Keir Starmer, they are basically in bed with the same civil servants and bureaucrats who are left-wing. They don't want to do anything. Although now they know that they have to be seen to be doing something because they will lose the election. They're going to start sounding more right-wing, the Labour government. Doesn't mean they are right-wing. They're going to sound right-wing, but they're not going to do anything about it. Now, let's, while we wait for the outcome of the meetings in government tonight, the emergency meetings, let's get some reactions. Stu says, thank you for your super chat. If they lose the appeal, boycott the hotels for selling us out. Yeah, but who's going to... The thing is, these sort of grassroots campaigns can be successful, but you have to make an effort. And firstly, a lot of these hotels in these smaller areas, they will be mostly occupied by domestic tourists rather than international tourists. So you can technically do a campaign to stop people from using them, but it's not an easy thing to do. But I agree. Send them to El Salvador. As I said earlier, I agree. It's the only other option. Nina says, hi, my lovely. It's great at news, but where are they going to put them? Deport. But that's the thing. So short term, I fully I sympathize with the British government right now, because short term, there is a new crisis. Where are they going to go? Because you would think, well, they're going to find a new place. It's not easy. It's not easy, bureaucratically, admin-wise, to go around, contact all the hotels, and they've been trying anyway, and get a new one to accept the deal and take them in. So for the next 2 weeks, the British government, they're not going to go to sleep. They're going to be working day and night to try and somehow relocate the migrants from the Bell Hotel. Katie says, I know it's random, but would you find and comment on Tim Ballard's video about his ongoing rescue operations in Syria? Sure, thank you, Katie. Time to seek a security guarantee from the Starmer's government. So that's the new phrase, which has obviously been thrown around by both Ukraine and Russia. Both want security guarantee. I think the British people need security guarantee from the government. And I just realized my hair's a mess. What is going on here? So this is what we call a straight afro. It's politically incorrect. I don't care. Andrew says, no money to Pakistan unless they take all the wrong ones back. Amazed that we had signed an agreement that did otherwise. So, yeah, I mean, the Pakistani government don't want them back, so it's not going to happen. And we can't not give Pakistan money. That I'm not saying we should. I'm just saying the reality is it's not going to happen. Because the relationship between the West and Pakistan is a little bit weird because of the strategic location, the nuclear issue, and the close relationship between Pakistan and China. The West, including Britain, are trying their best not to allow Pakistan to get too close to China. At this point, my opinion is it's a little bit too late, because Pakistan and the CCP are going on dates. You can't stop that. Deb says, the problem is, if they don't deport them, they have to put them somewhere else. Question is where? Yeah, no one knows. They're going to find some sort of hotels in some places, right? But this could also, the more you do this, there's going to be a domino effect, as I said, and there's going to be eventually a legal precedent, which means all the migrant hotels are going to fall apart, and everybody will have to leave. The government knows there is a line, there is a political line that even Keir Starmer's socialist government know they cannot allow illegal migrants to just freely leave the hotels. Even they know they can't do that, because that could cause mayhem on the streets. Not necessarily just by the migrants, by the British public. Even they know that. They can't allow all the hotels to be closed and just migrants to just walk around. That's not going to happen. I mean, never say never. It's Keir Starmer, right? Maybe he's a masochist. So they're going to have, this could create a massive pressure for Starmer, for example, to go and beg Emmanuel Macron to come up with a new arrangement like what they used to have the camps in Calais. They might have to do something like that. They might have to have the British government to, obviously that means we're going to have to give more money to the French, but, and I'm not saying I agree with this solution, I'm just saying that's the only short-term thing they could do. To go and set up a camp in France, right by the water, monitored, observed by the British government, probably funded by the British government, the British taxpayers, and with the cooperation with the French. That's the only short-term solution, medium-term, that under a lot of pressure, if all the hotels are closing, it's the only thing that the government could do. Because the other thing the government could do is to leave the European Convention of Human Rights, the ECHR, which is one of the obstacles that stops you from deporting. One of the reasons Britain can't deport is because of the international obligations, the international law. Technically they can. That's on the table by us, but not by Keir Starmer and the Labour government. They're not going to leave ECHR because they're going to lose all their Labour voters. What they can do is to set up a camp in France. Again, this is the only other option if all the hotels fall. I hope Attorney General won't be able to put a spanner in the works. But that's why they're having the urgent meetings right now. So they're gonna try and find legal ways to basically get rid of this injunction. Squirrels Away says, so if all the hotels get shut down and we know there are not their houses, where will we put them? I say in tents somewhere and deport them, as we have nowhere for them, unless, of course, the lefty nutters would like to put them up. But that's the thing. I mean, the main question, and as everybody's asking, where are they going to go? Tents, which means camps somewhere, right? Nowhere to put them. How about France? Just an idea. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're saying on a human level, which I agree, yes, but good luck convincing Macron to take them back in, especially if you have a relationship like Starmer and Macron's relationship. Starmer is not going, he might politely ask Macron and Macron is going to politely say no. So, and Starmer is not going to disobey and just put the migrants in France because Starmer wants to keep his relationship with Macron. There's a lot of things happening between the UK and France. He doesn't want to jeopardize that. If I were Prime Minister, I don't care. But Starmer is not going to jeopardize his relationship with Emmanuel Macron. How can there be riots if the hotels are empty? Well, there will be riots if the migrants are walking around the streets for free. So there will be chaos. But that's a good point because I believe what the government meant was either what I said, because one of the, as Pork says, one of the point about the Home Office tried to block this today, right? The High Court ruling. They said this is going to cause more riots. I think what they really meant was if you close one hotel, which they did for now, then the far right thugs in the country are going to go to other hotels and they're going to get excited and they're going to start riots. What the government don't realize is that firstly, that's not going to happen because that usually happens if there's actual anger. People are celebrating right now. All the so-called far-right hooligans, they are celebrating, they're happy. So they're not going to riot outside other hotels. In fact, they're going to peacefully protest because they know all they have to do is just protest. Just peacefully stand outside, like in Epping, because they know it's going to work. They don't need to riot. The government is stupid. HMO in my street, not informed or warned that they were just suddenly there, and heard yesterday some new flats in my town are going to be for them too. By the way, a lot of the local councillors, something is happening, by the way. We're getting some breaking news from the Middle East, Israel and Iran. There's a situation, okay, we'll get back to that shortly. I think there's some juicy stuff is happening, especially in Gaza as well. But one of the things we discovered was that a lot of local councillors, local politicians have not been informed about the plans every time there's a hotel that's being used, which is very disgustingly against democracy. The bureaucrats are just doing it quietly. They don't want to tell people. To be fair, I get it. If you are a government and you're doing something disgusting like this, obviously you can't tell people. You can't tell people. You should, but you can't. You can't tell people, by the way, guys, just a quick memo, that hotel next door, we're going to bring migrants there tomorrow. You can't do that. It's going to kick off. So if you are being a villain, like the British government right now, obviously you're not going to tell people. Democracy says you should, but reality says you can't. It's just going to cause chaos. It's a lose-lose. The houses in towns and villages of the northeast, the big government have ran into the ground over decades, will be dumping ground. The dumping ground for the illegals, just like they did from London. Yeah, I mean, there are a number of options in terms of which counties or parts of the country to send them to, because they could go with middle-class areas, more urban areas, they could go with suburban, they could go with countryside, middle of nowhere. There are some random hotels they could find in a very, very remote village. Again, I'm not supporting the idea, I'm just saying if they want to be tactful, they could do that. But they can't go with any village that has a community, because even if there's a village with, like, I don't know, 500 people, if they're going to kick off, because you bring in a few hundred people, they're already the migrants will be the majority in the village. Now, Elizabeth says, Maya, stop with the hair. You are handsome as is. That's also a factual statement, but it's still a mess. Look at it. I'm still getting more updates about, I don't know what on earth is going on right now in Israel. Something weird is happening. We'll check that shortly. All right, send them to Camp Nowhere. Mark says, towards your haircut, Mr. Tousi. Oh, the super chat. £5 for a haircut. Yes, that would have worked in 2005 in London. These days, it's difficult to find that £5 haircut. Apparently, you can in small towns, but not in London. Kevin says, I heard that Somaliland will take them if Britain recognises the independence of Somaliland and pays Somaliland to house and feed them. That, to be fair, there have been third countries that have already offered many, despite the jokes. It's just that the European judges are still not helping. Anyway, I think some stuff is kicking off right now in the Middle East, so we have to double check what's going on. For now, if you want to follow us, if you want to get more out of this channel, stay up to date with all our live updates and news alerts and documentaries, podcasts, join Tousi TV Plus by going directly on tousi.tv. And don't forget to download the Tousi TV app, the home of geopolitical news, from your app stores today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Maya Tousi, and we are the media.